Cameron and welcome back to my channel where we sip tea and also spill the tea as I talk about some of my favorite reads. So today I'm going to be bringing you my December wrap up. Guys, I know I am 2 weeks too late on making this video, but I mean, hopefully it was worth the wait. Last month, I read a total of 8 books. I know that's not that big of a number, but you know what? I got really distracted last month because I started binge watching Lucifer, and guys, that show's like a 10 out of 10. I love that series, but I was literally gone to the world for like a whole week, and after that, I started to read as much as I could, but you know what? I have no regrets, and now I'm going to be bringing you all the books that I read and enjoyed from the month of December. So without further ado, let's get into this video, okay? So the first book that I read in the month of December was Spin the Dawn by Elizabeth Lim. So this book really reminds me of if Aladdin and Mulan were to have a baby together, then this would be the spawn. But you know, there's also a touch of Project Runway into this series, and let me tell you why. So this follows a girl named Cameron, and she lives in a world where women are seen as just being motherly household type of figures. They do not belong outside of the household, but our girl here, she wants to be an imperial tailor. That is her big dream. Her father, he is somebody who, he is a very famous tailor in this world, and he has taught Tamara all of his secrets and everything that he knows about tailoring. And so this girl gets her chance to shine and to live out her dreams whenever the king sends out an invite to her father to invite him to come to the castle and to compete in an imperial tailor challenge to see which tailor has what it takes to become the imperial tailor. So this girl, after her father says that he doesn't want to compete in this challenge, she decides to disguise herself as a man and to go and compete in his place. And it's here that she ends up competing in all of these challenges. She also ends up meeting the court enchanter whose name is Eden, and he's kind of like a cross between like a wizard and a genie, a djinn, because he is bound to the king's will and he has to fulfill whatever his king demands of him. And so it's here that they meet, and there starts to be kind of like a little bit of a relationship that builds up very, very slowly. And yeah, so guys, I have to say the writing was absolutely gorgeous. I loved the writing. It was so, so pretty. But there was just some scenes in here that I feel like the author could have made it shorter than it was. It just felt like kind of drawn out. And another thing that I have to say is that y'all know I'm all about the romance, right? And while the relationship was a bit of a slow burn at first, towards the end it just started to get very rushed and fast-paced, and I wasn't really into that. And that just kind of turned me off a bit. But beyond that, I really did like the myths and the culture that was explored in this book. I loved how you can tell the author really took her time to create a huge world. There was a lot of world building and just so many different things going on throughout this book. And there's a big cliffhanger at the ending that is just so crazy. It just leaves you at the edge of your feet. And while I haven't gotten the next book in the series, I do have to say it did leave me wanting to get my hands on it. Even though this book wasn't my absolute favorite, that cliffhanger, that was a good cliffhanger, you guys. So yeah, that was Spin the Dawn by Elizabeth Lim. Okay, so after that book. The second book that I got my hands on was Descending into Madness by Stacey Marie Brown. And first of all, I just have to say, this whole book, it felt like a supernatural episode, just like a really long extended version of it with different characters, obviously. But the reason why this reminded me of just a supernatural episode was because there were so many different creatures in this world, but at the same time, it had a big Christmas element to it, and it just reminded me of like the Christmas episodes, like the seasonal Christmas episodes that you'd see on Supernatural. And I just don't know how to describe it. But if you like Supernatural, then I really think that you should do yourself a favor and read this book. But let me explain more as to what the plot of the story is and all the juicy tidbits that I want to tell you. So this follows a girl named Alice Liddell, and she ends up following this guy. He looks like a half deer, half man. I guess you can say he's kind of like a centaur, except instead of being like mixed with a goat, or was it a goat? I don't, what are centaurs? Like they're half man, half goat, right? I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong, you guys. But instead of being like half man, half beast, this guy is half man, half reindeer, you know, but he's a sexy reindeer. Okay, I feel like I'm over explaining this, so let me just tell you, she follows this man, right? She follows this man, deer man, into the forest, and it is Christmas time, just so you know, it's Christmas time, and she's working as like an elf in the Santa Wonderland place, but she ends up following this man into the forest because, right, guys, that's such a smart move, following a guy into the forest in the middle of the night. But you know what? We all do stupid things in life, and that was just her very, very, very stupid thing that she did. So she follows this guy into the forest, and she ends up falling into this world that is called Winterland. And if this is starting to sound familiar, let me tell you guys, this is a retelling of Alice in Wonderland, except it's Alice in Winterland. And all the characters that we see in Winterland are people who we know of from very, very popular Christmas stories and Christmas movies. But instead of them being happy and merry and jolly, they're all very, very dark and very, very twisted, and also very, very sexy. And so our girl, whenever she finds herself in Winterland, she ends up coming across this man who is named Scrooge, and we can all guess what Christmas character he is based off of, and that is Ebenezer Scrooge. She meets this man, and he's also surrounded by all these other Christmas characters, and they're all just having some big feast. And then all of a sudden, these like gingerbread men, I think they're gingerbread men, I can't really remember, but these gingerbread men walk in, and they're a part of the Queen's soldiers, and they end up breaking up this feast, and they take Alice and all of the members back to the Queen's castle. And Alice finds out that in this land, Christmas is forbidden. You're not allowed to celebrate Christmas. You're not allowed to have a fun and jolly time. None of that is allowed. And so obviously they were breaking the rules, they're rebels, and so she ends up finding herself in a very bad situation, which she does end up getting out of. And it's from here that Alice and Scrooge and all of the other merry gang, they all team up together to fight against the Queen. And yeah, from there things get very, very hectic and crazy, and there's one action scene and adventure after the other. So obviously there's gonna be a relationship between Scrooge and our girl Alice, and guys, this book was just altogether, it was such a fun and refreshing read. I felt like there was such an interesting take on these Christmas characters. I really have never seen this type of retelling before. It was just such a unique take on all of the Christmas characters that we know of and love. I do have to say, I felt like the relationship was a little bit rushed. It could have been slower, but at the same time, this is only supposed to be a duology series, so I kind of understand why it was a little bit faster paced. And guys, I just love this cover, you guys. It's beautiful. So yeah, if you like supernatural, definitely check this book out because it totally has supernatural vibes, right? And overall, this book was just so much fun. So that was Descending into Madness by Stacey Marie Brown. So the next book that I read was an MC book called Trigger by J.L. Drake. So this book follows a girl who is on the run from her past, and she ends up going to this town where her old best friend lives, and she also luckily gets offered a job from her best friend to work in this bar that he has ties to. And the ties that he has is that he's actually a member of the motorcycle club who owns said bar. And so it is here that she gets a job working behind the bar, and she meets the head of the motorcycle club named, you guessed it, Trigger. And so it's here that they end up starting to like each other, and then her past starts to come back with a vengeance, and at the same time our motorcycle club ends up having some tough times with their rival motorcycle club, and so there's a lot of tension and action that goes on there. So guys, let me just say, this book was not one of the best books of this month by far. It was probably the one that it was the one that I least liked for the whole month of December, which I'm so sad to say because I had so much hope for this book. Like, I really was excited to go into this. I was excited to read more about a motorcycle club because, to be fair, I haven't read that many MC books, so this was like one of my first tastes of the wilder side of MC romance. But guys, I just feel like I got stuck with an MC romance that just was not the best, and it kind of just left a bad taste in my mouth. I haven't tried to read any other MC books after that, and I also have to say that I feel like the relationship, like, oh my gosh, the relationship was so rushed. Like, literally, they met, they looked at each other, they had a conversation, they rode on his bike, and then they rode each other. So, yeah, it was just super, super quick and super, super fast, and there was also some cheating that was going on there that I was really, really annoyed about, and it was never even addressed after that. Like, no. You know, it just annoyed me. But anyways, the book, it wasn't terrible, but it just was not good. It really wasn't that good. That's just what I felt about that. So that was Trigger by J.L. Drake. So let's go into the next book, right? So the fourth book on my list is called Divine Blood by Beck Michaels. So this follows a girl named Denalia, which, let me just say, like, isn't that a cool name? I've never read a book with the main character being named Denalia. It just has such a pretty flow coming off your lips, right? Denalia. It's pretty. So anyways, this girl named Denalia, whenever she was younger, her family was brutally murdered by this demon known as the Shadow Demon. And this Shadow Demon visits the village every so many years. And whenever this demon comes, it hunts down people in the village and kills them. Our girl Denalia wants to try to find a way to keep this demon from destroying her village, wreaking more havoc on the people that live there. And most of all, she wants to try to protect her younger sister, who ended up surviving the attacks from the Shadow Demon. And so she finds this book which has a secret map in it that will lead her to this island which has all of these fantastical treasures and weapons, and on this island there's a weapon that will destroy the Shadow Demon once and for all. So she obviously wants to go there. So she ends up leaving her village. She actually ends up stumbling upon these people who are known as as celestials, and they're basically descendants of angels, and she ends up meeting the prince. His name is Cassiel, and they end up forming a alliance, and he agrees to help her try to find this island. And of course he also has ulterior motives as to why he wants to go to the island in the first place, but he agrees to go on this adventure with her. And at the same time, she also has her cousin who is a werewolf hybrid. He's actually a lichen, so he's half werewolf, half man. He ends up joining them as well, and so they all group up and they end up going on this adventure to this island. And while this is all going on, there's also these other people who they want to get their hands on this map. Somehow they find out that this map leads to that island, and a lot of people, like, they want to go to this island because this island has so many treasures and so many weapons of legend and myth. And so obviously that island is like, it's epic, you know, like everybody wants to go there. And so they end up trying to hunt her down so that they can get their hands on this map as well. Gosh, I'm talking a lot. I'm talking really fast. But anyways, there ends up being like a little bit of a romance between Cassiel and our girl Denalia. And yeah, so guys, once again, I have to say, this book, it kept my attention, but at the same time, it reminded me a lot of Spin the Dawn in the way that I just felt like this book just was so long. By the time I was done with this book, it felt like I had read like 600 pages or something. There were just scenes in there that I feel like could have been cut down so much. And I think what it really was that there was just so many quiet moments where our characters were just walking along the forest and yada yada yada, and it was just kind of boring. And there was more moments of them walking along the forest and just trying to survive on their journey than there was with them having like some big fun action scenes, right? It just felt like slower paced, you know? And then the romance to me was just not good. I felt like Cassiel, he was just very immature. And I guess him being a prince, it just made him feel like he was better than Denalia, and he was better than her cousin who's a lichen. And obviously I think that's a part of his character arc, because he does start to move from being that spoiled, rotten prince to having a little bit more selfless tendencies, but it just, to me, wasn't enough. I just felt like throughout the whole book, he was just annoying, and he said so many rude remarks to our girl Denalia. And then Denalia, she was so sweet. She just saw the positives out of everything, but at the same time, it just got to the point where I couldn't stand it, because she would literally let this guy Cassiel treat her like crap, but then she would say, oh, he's still a good guy, even though he treats me like I'm garbage. Like, no, girl, she needs to figure out that she's so much more than this guy could ever be. And he may be a prince, but she's a freaking queen, and she should not let anybody treat her bad whatsoever. And I just couldn't handle it. It was just really not satisfying, that relationship. I just want it to be gone. You know, like, I want that to go away and for our girl to meet somebody else that is hotter and better than Cassiel will ever be. But that is just a dream, and I don't think that will ever happen. So, enough ranting, okay? So yeah, guys, that is Divine Blood by Beck Michaels. I swear, guys, here soon, I'm gonna be talking about the books that truly were remarkable, but in order to get to those amazing books, we have to go through the less than amazing books. And here's another one that wasn't my favorite, but it wasn't bad. So that is Sempre by J.M. Darkhauer. First of all, I just have to say, this book, it is written so beautifully. The way that this author writes, it's just so pretty. It's almost poetic. The author just has such a gorgeous style of writing that is so quote-worthy. Like, it's so pretty. But at the same time, I just wasn't really here for the main male character. I didn't really like him that much. He wasn't a bad male character by any means, but he just wasn't up to my standards. So let me tell you what this is about, okay? This follows a girl who I think she's 17 years old, and she is somebody who she has been a slave her whole life, and she ends up getting a new change of scenery and a new change to her life whenever she ends up getting sold from one master to another. And her new master's name is Dr. Vincent DeMarco, and he is somebody who he works for the mafia, and she ends up moving with him to his house, and it's here that she meets his youngest son, whose name is Carmine. So it's here that they end up starting to form a forbidden relationship, and Carmine ends up trying to come up with a way to free her so that they can have their own happily ever after together. And I have to say, despite this being such a dark and heavy-hitting topic, I felt like the romance between Carmine and our main character was really sweet. It was told, like I said, in a lyrical type of tone, and I felt like the build-up was nicely done, but I do think once they did start having a clear relationship and romance, things started to get really rushed and feelings started to get very, very heightened. But anyways, the thing that I didn't really like about this book, which I mentioned beforehand, was Carmine. I just felt like Carmine, he was very immature. And at the same time, like, I understand why he's so immature. Like, he is only 17 years old. But, you know, there were times that he was just kind of rude to our main character whenever he had no reason or right to be rude to her, and it just kind of put me off in the wrong way. And our main character, she reminded me a lot of Denalia from Divine Blood. She tries to see the good in everyone, and she especially tries to see the good in Carmine, because after having such a dark and hard life, she really puts a lot of her hopes and dreams in Carmine. And so whenever he has these moments where he mistreats her, she tries to act like it was nothing, that it was okay, and she makes excuses for him, and it irritated me so much because Carmine should not be treating her the way he does whatsoever. But besides that, I do have to say I liked the mafia tones to this story, but at the same time I felt like the author could have done so much more in involving the mafia, because while we did start to see more of the mafia, the workings of the mafia towards the end of the story, it was kind of just like a peek through the blinds. Like, we didn't see the full picture of the mafia, and maybe that's just something that our author wants to explore more in the next book, but I just felt like there was so much more that she could have done with the whole mafia side of things. It just wasn't explored that much. The main focus in the story was, of course, the romance, and I just wish that the romance was something more to my liking, you know, but I still like the story, and the book was just beautiful. The writing is gorgeous. So that was Sempre by J.M. Darhauer. So the next book on my list is Heart of the Fae by Emma Hams. So this story follows a girl who is living in a village, and she's working as a midwife, and she is somebody who she has always believed in the Fae, and she knows that they are true. But a lot of people in this village like to act like the Fae isn't real, and I think there's actually like treasonous charges to where you could possibly get burned at the stake if you're caught trying to talk and pray to the Fae. So this girl, who's a midwife, she wants to try to find a cure to this disease that is sweeping this village, and her father actually ends up getting this illness, and so finding a cure becomes so much more important to our main character. And so this girl, she ends up contacting a Fae, and this Fae makes a deal with her. She wants her to go on this adventure to this isle where this man who's known as the Stone King lives. He's supposed to be the only person who can get his hands on this so-called cure. And so our girl, obviously wanting to try to find a cure for her father, she takes her up on this offer and she goes on this adventure to this isle. It's here that she meets the Stone King, and let me just tell you right now, this is actually a retelling of Beauty and the Beast. So the Stone King, he's supposed to be somebody who he really has a chip on his shoulder for the world and for all these things that were done to him that he sees as not fair, you know, and the things that were done to him, they really aren't fair at all. And it's here that they start to form a relationship, and this whole time our main girl is just trying to convince him to give her the cure, but at the same time, while she's trying to convince him, she finds herself starting to fall in love with him. So I have to say, I loved the fae myth and lore that we saw in this book. That whole side of the fae that was explored, it was just so interesting, and I feel like the author did such a good job at really bringing the culture of the fae people alive in this world, and the magic was just sparking off the page. But where that magic was very much seen in the making and weaving of the fae culture, it was not really seen in the romance. So I have to say, this romance, once again, it was very rushed for me. I just felt like they barely knew each other. They honestly didn't have that many interactions until they were practically admitting their undying love for each other. It just did not scratch that slow burn itch that I have, and I honestly didn't really like the main love interest as well, because obviously while he was supposed to be beastly in his nature, you know, he's supposed to be the beast, he's supposed to be grumpy and mad at the world and everything, but I just feel like the way that he treated her was so annoying, and I just feel like all the books that I read had such a common theme. Like, I was just not enjoying the romances that were being built in most of these books that I read. But anyways, I honestly do think it was a good read though, because I really liked the fae culture. That was just so cool, and that was really the driving point to this whole story. So yeah, that was The Heart of the Fae by Emma Hamm. Okay guys, we have finally made it to my favorite books of the month, okay? And I'm so happy that I read these towards the end of the month, because they truly just made my whole year. I'm so happy that I saved them to the end. So it is time to reveal to you one of my favorite books that I read of this month, and that is Killing Sarai by J.A. Redmersky. And the second book to this is called Reviving Isabel. And guys, this book series, it was so good. I really loved it. Oh my goodness. I do have to say, I actually like the first book better than the second one, but the second book was still really good. It's just this first one, like, this is literal magic. This was like drugs, man. I totally had to throw my Dare shirt away, because if this book was a drug, I would be sucking it all up through my nose like Coke. But yeah, so this book was still amazing, but it just did not have the same true qualities of the first one. Let me just tell you though what this book series is about. So it follows a girl named Sarai, and she is somebody who she is stuck in Mexico as a sex slave to this man who is a drug dealer, and at one point she finds a chance to try to escape whenever the drug dealer hires an assassin to try to hunt down this man that he wants dead. So this assassin, he ends up going to the compound that she lives at to meet with the drug dealer, and while they're having this meeting, she ends up escaping the compound and sneaking into the assassin's vehicle, where she ends up pulling a gun out on the assassin whenever the assassin ends up getting back into his vehicle to leave. And so she pulls this gun on him and she tells him to drive me to the border and get me out of Mexico for good. And so the assassin, he of course turns the tables on her and he ends up like knocking her out, and he then decides to actually kidnap her and to use her as ransom to try to get more money out of the drug dealer who he just made a business arrangement with. And so from here, while the drug dealer is contemplating what to do with this ransom, the assassin ends up taking her along across the border to complete a mission that he needs to have completed. And so obviously there starts to be a relationship between Sarai and the assassin, and even though Sarai the whole time she's trying to get away from him, she starts to have feelings for him. And guys, things just get so steamy towards the end. Oh, it was so amazing. And let me just tell you, my favorite thing about this book was that there was so much action. There was always something going on, and whenever you thought things were about to slow down, something new and crazy just jumped at you and just started happening right then and there. It was just so crazy. And this book, it just felt like such a fast-paced like action ride. It felt like I was watching like Taken or just some really amazing action movie, right? And then the relationship between our two main characters, it was just so intense. And the whole time they were trying to deny their feelings for each other, because obviously Sarai was like, how can I have feelings for this man who is holding me for ransom? Like, what the heck? But their relationship starts to unfold, and our girl starts to learn more about the assassin, and the assassin starts to learn more about Sarai. And guys, like, it was just so amazing. And I love how the assassin, he's such an immoral character. He's such a bad guy, and I just love a bad boy. And just read this book, please, please, please. And then after that, read the second book, because it was really good too. Oh, this series is so amazing. I love it. So that is Killing Sarai by J.A. Radomirsky. So the final book on my list is the absolute favorite book that I read in the month of December. It was so incredible, and that book was no other than Wallbanger by Alice Clayton. Okay, you guys, so this is about a girl who just gets a new apartment, and she starts to get really annoyed by her next door neighbor, because every night whenever she's just trying to get some sleep, she's trying to get some Z's, right, her sleep gets rudely interrupted because this man always brings home a woman of the evening, and she can literally hear everything as they are having sex. She can hear all the noises, and it gets to the point where he literally starts banging her walls with their lovemaking, and her freaking painting that she has above her bed falls onto her head. Like, what the heck? And so just gets to the point of no return, where our girl gets so annoyed by the man who she calls the Wallbanger, to where she walks out of her room in nothing more than her really cute pink nightie, and she ends up banging on his door. She becomes the doorbanger and interrupting his lovemaking session. And so he opens the door, and she confronts him and tells him that he needs to be more quiet and he needs to respect that he has neighbors, and the neighbors can hear everything. And so they end up having a real big like enemies type of relationship. But it's from here that she ends up meeting this guy, the same guy, at a party, and her friends starts to become really close with his friends, and so they obviously end up starting to run around in the same circles. And it's from here that they start to build a very strong friendship, which then starts to turn into a really sexy will they won't they type of relationship. So guys, let me just tell you, this book was so funny, and the relationship that was built between our two main characters, it was just amazing. It was so sweet and so caring. This book reminds me so much of the Off-Campus series in the way that it has the same type of humor and the same slow burn type of relationship that we see in the Off-Campus series. It's mirrored in this series as well. I also have to say that I listened to this as an audiobook, and oh my gosh, that audiobook was like 10 out of 10. Amazing. The woman that read the audiobook, she just had such a great way at telling the story and narrating the story. She could really change her voices. Like, there were some points where she was doing these crazy accents that were just like, it almost sounded like a different person, and oh, it was just so cool being able to listen to this book because it honestly felt like I was watching a movie. And I also have to say that I loved her friends in this book. I felt like they all had their own overarching story as well, which I think is really, really unique because most of the time, the friends in the story, they're really, most of the time not as talked about, but all the characters in this book had such a strong presence in the story, and they were just all together. It was just, there was so much humor and so much love and light in this story, guys. I just have to say, it felt like one big hug because the whole time I was listening to this story, I had a huge smile on my face. It just lit up my whole year, and it just made me so happy. I absolutely loved this book, and if you're somebody who you are just looking for a book to make you smile, to make you forget about the world, and to just laugh a lot, then read this book. And also, guys, the romance, the steam in this book, let me just like, it deserves snaps because it was so sexy. I loved it, you guys. So yes, out of all the books on this list, Killing Sarai and Wallbanger, like, those are the top two you need to read, okay? Whatever you're doing, whatever you're reading, stop it now. Put down that book and check out these because they are both so sexy and great at the same time, and you will not regret it, you guys. I swear. Okay, so guys, we made it to the end of the video. I have to say, I have such a sore throat now. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm literally starting to lose my voice. It's pretty bad, but if you made it to the end of this video, I want to thank you because I feel like this was a really long video. But as always, guys, I love you so much. If you like this video, please make sure to like and to subscribe because I post new videos every week, and every week I talk about new books. So if you are interested in said new books, then subscribe and join the family, okay? And at this point, I'm just rambling, so I'm gonna cut the video off, okay? I hope you'll have an amazing day. Mwah. Bye, guys.